Good morning and welcome to Indie Interactive, where we talk about making great music, connecting with your audience, and growing your business. And I'm super excited to be here with you guys this morning, with you musicians. My name is Bree Noble. I'm the founder of Women of Substance Radio and Podcast, the founder of the Female Entrepreneur Musician and of the Female Musician Academy. So let me know if you're here this morning. Chime in the chat. We are going to be talking about some marketing lessons that I've learned from growing this podcast, the Women of Substance podcast, to over 300,000 downloads in the last little under 3 years. And also we are at 10,000 monthly downloads, which is super exciting because that is, kind of an ongoing number that I can watch to know that we've really grown and we're continuing to grow. So I've learned a lot of lessons along the way, and they're not just specific to podcasts. I believe these lessons can be applied for you guys across the board as musicians, because what this is about sharing what you have with other people, getting other people involved, learning how to promote yourself mostly online in this case, and just getting a lot of traction. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I want to go over here and say hi to all of you guys that are in the chat. Hey, Carlene, how's it going? Awesome. So glad to see you here. I'm sure more people will be showing up soon, as you usually do. So I'm going to jump in right now to this little marketing lesson that I'm going to do, and want to find out from all of you listening, what is your experience with podcasts? Do you love podcasts? Do you listen to podcasts? And how do you consume them? Because I think that'll be interesting for this discussion. When do you consume them? Do you consume them on your phone, on your computer, in a browser? Like, how do you do it? So that bears a little bit on the discussion that I'm going to have today, but I'm going to jump right into the first marketing lesson from my podcast, which is cast a wide net. So when I first started the podcast, I didn't just start it on iTunes. I mean, that's kind of where everybody starts with podcasts, but I knew that I needed to catch everybody where they are. And so I didn't want to just be on iTunes, because not everybody consumes podcasts on iTunes. Not everybody has an iOS device. Back then, the podcast app was not nearly as good. And so I knew I needed to be on Stitcher for people on Android. I knew at that point I needed to be on SoundCloud, so it was really easy to share. I knew that I needed to get into places like TuneIn and iHeartRadio and other places that can distribute my podcast. So the way that I apply this to you guys in music is, don't just put your music on one channel. And I think we're tempted, because we really want to sell our music, we're tempted to just put it on our website and tell everybody to go there. But you have to realize that not everybody is going to consume music that way. Especially the younger people nowadays consume music in such different ways. My daughter listens to all of her music on YouTube. Many other people I know listen exclusively to Spotify or Pandora. But some people still listen to CDs, and many people do, listen to music on people's websites. And the great thing about websites is it's easy to put a link somewhere and people can listen. I think even SoundCloud is still really a good place to have your music, or Bandcamp nowadays, because it's easy to share. So I'd love to know from you guys, do you have your music in a lot of different places? Because I think that's important. I think that we don't need to be stingy with our music. We need to get it into the places where people are already, and it's in their native environment, because you're not necessarily going to get somebody who's not a podcast, listener, or not a normal iOS listener to listen to it there when they would normally listen to music on TuneIn or iHeartRadio or something like that. So think about where you've got your music and make sure that you have a wide enough net cast to catch everybody where they're at. So before I get to the next one, I just want to jump in here because I know that it takes a bit for people to come on. So I want to say hi to, oh, awesome. Hi, Christina. Hi, Molly. Hi, Avelia. So great to see you guys. Just want to kind of see what you guys are saying. Awesome. Let's see. Carlene says she loves our podcast. That's great. Sometimes other people's are really bad. That's funny. Yeah, yeah. So she says sometimes people are selling the whole time on their podcast, and that obviously doesn't go over well. So the one great thing about my show is that I'm actually promoting other people. So that's kind of something we can do as musicians too. Like, we can lift ourselves up by promoting other people. You can do kind of cross promotion with other artists and, you know, say, well, I want to do a promotion to you, to my audience, and tell people about your music, and then will you do that to your audience about my music? And I think sometimes it's so much easier to talk about other people's music and to promote other people than it is to promote yours. Let's see what other people are saying regarding we need a hashtag don't be stingy. I like that one. I think I need to just, if that's not, one's not there, I need to create it, because I feel like sometimes we're hoarding our music because we want people to consume it in a certain way, and that's not always going to happen, and we're going to sacrifice listeners for that. So keep that in mind. So another thing that I do with my podcast is I always ask people to connect with me on lots of different social media. Again, just like the platforms, not everybody is on every social media. So when I contact the artists that I work with, and you can guys can do this with your fans, give them a lot of options to connect with you on different social media. And I'm not saying you need to be everywhere, but, you know, maybe in one email you suggest that they connect with you on YouTube and subscribe to your channel. In another email, you suggest that they connect with you on Facebook. And so, you know, maybe the person that doesn't really use YouTube, they'll just ignore that first one, but then they'll see connect with me on Facebook, and they'll be like, oh, I'll do that. I'm on Facebook all the time. So make sure you give them a lot of options to connect with you as well. And you don't need to be on every social media channel, but like I always say, like, every musician I think should be on YouTube, and then pick one or two other channels and make sure that you make those options readily available to your fans so they can find you on those other places. So I always make sure to put our social links everywhere. It's all over our podcast page. It's in all the emails that I send to all of our artists that are on the show, to make sure that they connect with us so they see it when we're promoting the show. And then that moves on to the next one, which is I ask them to share. So you can absolutely do the same thing with your fans. Don't feel shy to ask them to share. And you can ask them very, very nicely. You know, we don't have to be like, go share my stuff. You know, you can say, it would mean the world to me if you would be willing to share this with some of your friends, or, you know, say it in a way that sounds so appreciative and full of gratitude, and it's going to be hard for them to say no. On that same note, make sure that whatever you're asking them to share is very shareable. So, you know, if you ask them to share a video, make sure that you give them the link to it such that it's very shareable, the sharing link. If you ask them to share something on Facebook, make sure that they have a link that they can share on Facebook that makes sense on Facebook, and not, you know, like a YouTube link on Facebook, because that doesn't really go over well on Facebook. So make sure that you've got the right links in the right places. And when you ask them to share, you make it so easy. It's like a no-brainer. They just click one button and they've shared. And what I do with the podcast is I tag everybody. So it's so easy for them to share because it just pops up right in their feed, and they can just hit the share button, and they do it all day long. You know, I probably get an average of I'd say 5 to 7 shares every time I put out a podcast just on Facebook, because the artists are doing that for me. So, you know, if you ask, and I don't even ask them, but I tag them, so that's kind of like an ask. But if you ask your fans, they will totally share. They want to share the wealth of what you have to offer because they're your fan. So don't be afraid to ask. Let's see. The other thing that I do that I want to make sure you guys remember is to continue to market something after you release it. So if you guys follow me on Twitter, you might notice that I promote older podcasts. And I have, you know, kind of an automated system that allows me to continue to promote older podcasts so they're not just forgotten as soon as they're released. And it's the same thing with our albums and our singles and our videos and all that stuff. When you guys create your automation for your social media, or if you set up some kind of a spreadsheet to share on social media every week, make sure that you throw in some of those things that you've released in the past. You know, any of your new fans will not have seen something you released 3 months ago, and maybe some of them that, you know, were there, they missed it, or maybe they wanted a chance to share it with more people and just got busy. So make sure that, you know, our releases don't go into the graveyard. You know, we have plenty of time to continue to share things. Something that you released even 2 years ago, if it makes sense to share it now, if it has a very timely message, you know, if it's something that's like evergreen, like it, for example, if it's a holiday song, you know, you can keep sharing that every year around the holidays. If it relates to a specific event, you know, you can share that. Or if you just want to bring something back that's just really near and dear to your heart, don't feel like you can't share that because it's too old. As long as it still fits with your brand and everything, there's nothing wrong with doing that. So I would love to know from you guys in the chat, now that there's a bunch of you in there, do you guys do this? Do you share older content? Are you, you know, cognizant of the fact that you need to continue to share these things and they don't die as soon as you send them out? Now, I know some PR agents will say, you know, when you have a release, it's important to get a whole bunch of PR around it, around the release, because, you know, after a little bit after your release, it's kind of old news. But when it comes to you and your fans, that's different. I don't think that things that we release 3 months, 6 months, a year ago are old news to our fans, especially if we're constantly getting new fans, as we should. So there are, you know, constantly new fans to the Women of Substance podcast, and every time that I share an older episode, to them it's completely new. And they don't even realize it's old because it's a numbering system. It's not like it said this was released on this date. It just says, you know, this podcast number, and these are the artists that are on the show, and to them it's new. So I'm going to go and check and see what people are saying about that. Yay, okay, Molly says sure do, good job. Very good. Anniversaries, oh yeah, yes, totally. You know, in fact, we are coming up on the 10-year anniversary of Women of Substance. I started Women of Substance Radio in November 2007. So I'm going to basically say that right now is our anniversary, even though it is in about maybe 2 weeks. But yeah, I'm feeling very anniversary-ish right now, and that's another reason that I'm doing this episode. Let's see. Yeah, I'm glad you guys agree with what I'm saying, because you don't want to you've worked really hard on these things, right? You want to make sure that you really milk them for all they're worth and make sure that everybody that wants to see them does see them. Want to say hi to Elle and Henry. See if anybody else popped in here since I checked last time. So many awesome people showing up today. So 10 years, Carlene's freaking out. I know. And I think I probably have known you almost that long, Carlene. Like, some of my artists have been around for those 10 years, which is kind of insane. 10 years ago, I was 35. That was a lot different than being 45. So, okay, so the next thing that I do with the podcast that I really encourage you guys to do is to get reviews. So, you know, for me, it's reviews on iTunes. That's really the best place to get reviews for the podcast. So heck, I'm going to go ahead and ask right now, if you guys have not reviewed the Women of Substance podcast or the Female Entrepreneur Musician podcast and you feel compelled to do that, go over to iTunes and give us a review. And the star rating is awesome, but just a little written review is even better, because it's just really helps people find us, and it helps us in the algorithm. And it's the same thing for you guys. When you've got an album on CD Baby or Amazon or any place like that, you want to ask for those reviews. They make all the difference. And truthfully, I mean, the best reviews are from fans that are spontaneous, but there's nothing wrong with asking for a review and giving them a reward for it. You know, plenty of people do that. You can say, you know, out of all the reviews I get in this next month, I'm going to draw one name at random and give them some special package. You can ask your friends that you're, you know, really close with to give you a review, because they're your fans too. Like, don't feel bad about asking. I don't feel bad about asking my mom for a review. She's like a true fan, so why not, you know? Let's see, I'm reading what Molly said. Yes, things stay relevant on the internet. That is so true. That is part of the beauty of the internet. So I want to challenge you guys to get some more reviews for your albums that you have out there, or also on your Facebook page. There is an option to get reviews there. I don't know if you've seen that. I know some of you have been asking each other for reviews, but if you're in the academy or you're in the free group, you know, if you want to start a thread exchanging reviews, I think that's totally cool, because we are all fans of each other's music. We're going to be honest, and you know, if you don't think the music is good, then don't review them. But pretty much everyone I know here has great music, so I'm not worried about that. So yeah, I challenge you guys to get some more reviews, because it really does help your ranking on those sites. I'm so cognizant of reviews when I do anything on Amazon nowadays, because I want to know that what I'm getting is good and some other people think it's good before I buy it. So just keep that in mind, that reviews are getting so much more important these days. So we do need to really take the trouble to go out and get those reviews and ask for them. Okay, so next, involving others in your music. This is huge. So obviously for me, this is built in with the podcast, right? I've got 7 artists every week that I put on the show, and I promote their music and I talk about them, and I put their, you know, I put their links on the page and all that stuff. And so when I do that, you know, they're obviously going to want to share it, because that makes them, you know, look cool to be on the show with all these other great artists. They're going to want to share it. And you can do the same thing with your music. So I was just interviewing somebody for the FEM podcast. It's going to come out in end of December. But I was interviewing her the other day, and we were talking about this, and she involved a bunch of her fans on her album. She had them come into the studio and sing on one of the songs. And what's so cool about that is all of them are obviously really excited about the album coming out, because they are on the album. They were physically involved in it. And so what are they going to do? They're going to invite all their friends to the CD release party. They're going to buy a bunch of copies and give it away as Christmas gifts, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I did a little bit of this on one of my albums, where I had some friends come in and sing, and that was really fun. It was not only a fun experience, but it makes them feel like, you know, it's a piece of them and they want to share it. So any way that you guys, if you can get some friends involved in a video that you're shooting, if you can get them involved in the studio, if you can ask your fans to somehow contribute to either your website or you know, create, like I've seen artists create, have fans create videos for them, or have a video contest that fans create from concert footage and all kinds of cool stuff. Getting more people involved are going to make them more excited to share. That you're going to get out to new circles, and it's just going to help expand your reach further and further, concentric circles. So think about how you can do that with your music. Okay. So next, let's see, shareable images. So that's one thing that I do, and I'm trying to think of how you guys can work this in. But when you ask people to share, if you have an image that goes with it, it's so much easier for them to share, because it, will pop up easier on their feed and people will see it better and it will look nice and it will help with your branding and everything. So when you ask people to share, if you can give them an image, and if there's somebody that's somehow involved, like say you do a show with another artist, if you can create like an image that has both of you on it, that shows that you're performing together, that is so cool for them, because it's like a personalized image that they can go out and share. And so I do this for the podcast, and it's been super popular. And it's like, yes, I spend a little bit of money having the person that helps me create my images do them every week, but it's free advertising, because they're out there sharing this image that, looks good. It's got my branding on it. It's got their name on it. So they're proud to share it. And so any way that you can think of to give away things that people can share that have your branding on it is just going to be so much better for you. And it's cool for them because it looks good. It makes them want to share what you've got. Okay, so lastly, I test. So I've tested a lot of things along the way, and we always need to be like scientists in the marketing world. We need to be testing different things. So I've tested many things along the way, and many things I've stuck with and several things I haven't, and then I've put in new things. So, when I first started, like I said, we were on SoundCloud and we put every single one on SoundCloud. And over time, I found that there just wasn't a lot of sticking power on SoundCloud, and it's to make more sense for me to share on the social media directly from the blog that's created from my podcast instead of SoundCloud. So instead of paying, after a year I was in SoundCloud, I reevaluated and said, nope, this isn't worth the $121 or whatever it is to pay for that. And I discontinued that. And I did an analysis and decided that that wasn't worth my time and money. But when I did that, then I started looking at other things that I could add. So I added in promoting on LinkedIn. And actually, that has actually been really, really good. I've seen a big uptick from promoting on LinkedIn, which who knew, right? I wouldn't have thought of that at first. I used to promote on Clamor, and when Clamor was new, and it seemed like a great platform, but we just weren't getting enough traction there to make it worth it. It was all the same people that were listening, and it wasn't bringing in new listeners. So I decided to stop spending time on that, and I may add something new. I might like check out Anchor FM or whatever, new platform that I want to try to promote the podcast. So I just want to encourage you to like test different things, test them one at a time, and see if they're really working for you. And don't be afraid to abandon them if they're not working, but make sure you've given it the good college try. Make sure that you've tested it for a long enough period. In my experience with marketing, I think you really need to test something for about 6 months before you really know if it's going to have traction for you, because these things don't happen quickly. I didn't get 300,000 downloads in the first year even. It takes a long time to build this thing up. And I think it took me maybe a year and a half to get to 100,000 downloads. And now I'm at around 300,000 after almost 3 years. So it just takes sticking to it and testing and then reevaluating constantly. And so on that note, I actually have a bit of an announcement today, and it relates to us, being 10 years in on Women of Substance, and this whole testing idea. So when we started out in 2007, we were an online radio station. And if you guys knew us back then, we started out on Live 365, and then we moved to our own platform, and we've moved to a couple different platforms since then with different players, with lots of features and all those kinds of things. And we started out as an online radio station because that's what made sense in 2007. People were not thinking about podcasts then. They were thinking about radio. And when you said radio, that had a certain amount of cachet, even if it was online. Now I've seen that declining over the years. And I've been looking at it, and every year I'll look back at it and say, I don't know, should I continue with this? And after I created the podcast, I started watching to see, you know, which one was going to be better or if I wanted to keep them both. And so far, it had been good to keep them both. But in the last 6 months, for many reasons, it has been clear to me that what we really want to do is triple down on the podcast. It's been growing like crazy. It's so shareable. It is just, you know, it can be on so many different platforms. It's on demand. It's people can listen whenever they want. You can put it right into the Facebook feed or whatever feed, and people can just listen right there without having to go to another platform. And so for that reason, I've decided to actually stop broadcasting on Women of Substance radio and just be doing the podcast. And for all the reasons that podcasts are awesome, the radio station is not. It's not as shareable. It's not as easily accessible. It is not on demand. And half the time, or even 3/4 of the time, people are actually confused between what a radio station is and what a podcast is, and why their song that plays on the radio is not on demand. So I've just found that in the new climate, podcasts are the wave of the future, and they're the wave of now. And so that's what we're going to be doing. And I really don't think it's going to change much here, other than it's just going to allow us to grow faster and give me a little bit more time to focus on doing even more with the podcast and getting it on even more platforms. So that is my little announcement in relation to testing and reassessing. And that's where we are after 10 years. We have fully moved, slowly migrated from online radio to popular podcast. So that's my marketing lessons learned from 300,000 downloads on the podcast and reaching 10,000 listeners a month. Just going to go check and see if there's any comments here. Always wondered about LinkedIn. Yeah, I always wondered about it too. It's one of those things where I think you don't know if it's going to work until you test it, and it works for certain things and not other things. It's great for connection. I find some fantastic podcast guests. I've been asked to be on other people's podcasts through LinkedIn. I've connected with a lot of really cool people in the industry. So I think it could be good for you guys to connect with other musicians who are on there. Because I feel like musicians that are on LinkedIn are either very serious about their music, or they're professionals that work in a professional position. But what that usually means is when they're professional in their professional life, they're also professional in their music, even if they are doing it part-time. So I think they would be good people to work and collaborate with. Awesome. So thank you guys so much for all these comments. And I'd love to hear, you know, on a personal note, I'm connected with most of you in person, what you think about this, the fact that we're shutting down the radio side of Women of Substance. I think most of you have pretty much migrated over to listening to the podcast almost all the time. So I don't think it will really make much of a difference for most people. It might just be a blip on the radar, but it's just, it makes a lot more sense for us marketing-wise, time-wise, and really legally wise, as far as having to worry about paying the correct royalties and all that on the radio station. So just what my heart is and what my mission is to promote you as indie artists. And I feel like the best platform for doing that is the podcast. And I'm going to try harder to, you know, get more opportunities to share the podcast in different locations with some of the extra time that I'm gaining from not having the radio station. So I hope that explains that to you guys. I didn't really know how to announce it, so I thought I'd just do it on this episode and stick it in with a bunch of really helpful marketing content. So thank you guys so much for showing up. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate all of your support over the years to Women of Substance, and I look forward to continuing to work with you in the future after, you know, it's been 10 years, so we're starting our 11th year already, and we're not stopping anytime soon. So have a great day, afternoon, evening, and continue to make great music, connect with your audience, and grow your business. Bye.